on certainty?
I mean, just to talk a little bit about when I'm thinking about certainty, what I mean is I think it's a fairly general theme of cognition in general. Like, what is thinking for? I think one of the things that thinking is for is to reduce uncertainty. I think that's one of the reasons why we have thinking at all. We're the kinds of creatures that move around. We're the kinds of creatures that have to make decisions. If you're a tree, you don't move around. You don't have to make a lot of decisions on where to go when you're a tree. You do when you're motile. You need to make all these decisions in a social context, and the social context we know is orders of magnitude more complex than navigating a physical landscape. Walking into a room and knowing who's friendly and who's not, and who's happy and who's sad, and that person likes that person about that person because of that what that person said. It's a lot to try to figure out when you've got to make decisions that could be life or death decisions in that kind of a context, or that could have a very significant material impact on your life. And this is a part of a human universal, is being a social creature, trying to figure out what to do. One of the reasons we have such complex neurological architecture is to process that information and try to cull out and prune out all of the other kind of explanations that might not be useful to us, so that we can get down to reducing the uncertainty, to getting to it down to a smaller number of variables that we can make a good decision on. A byproduct of that is that when we're dropped into an informational landscape like we have now, which is vastly more complex, where we're not just dealing with a small group of people in a room, we're dealing with a whole global information landscape of news and issues and cultures that we care about, and problems going on in Uluru or going on in Syria that we're getting involved in. We have the same tendency, I think, to want to reduce those different explanations down to something we can jump onto. And I think there is a human tendency, as I mentioned before, to take any explanation instead of no explanation. And that's where it's a hard thing that I think you do need to learn and train to be able to take no explanation instead of any explanation, or take an explanation and have confidence in it only to the degree that you have evidence and reasons to support it. That's not an easy thing to kind of do, but I think it's a natural thing to try to find that certainty.
I think that a lot of what we're talking about with that quest for certainty, that's always been around probably, but it seems to be coming more and more to the fore because we're so overloaded with information. And if there could be ways for helping people to sort through when information really is information and it's informative, when it's not even factual and it's not coming from an expert, you know, all of that kind of thing. But then whether some information is actually important or not. So in an age when we're completely bombarded all the time with images and facts and factoids, how do we figure out what we actually want to keep a hold of and what we actually want to spend our time doing? Because I think we're at great risk of just being bombarded all the time and therefore not actually questing for certainty, but in fact being quite willing almost to go along with being uncertain and just saying, well, you know, I think there are two extremes going on. One is, well, I absolutely think this and you're not going to shake me no matter what you tell me, no matter what you throw at me, I'm not going to be shaken at all. And the other is, there's too much information, so I just can't tell. So how is it that we strike a balance between that? I think that that's probably one of the biggest challenges within education in the 21st century, I would say.